Welcome to the Underground.
Turn me up, bitch!
My Little Underground with Peter A.
It's My Little Underground. I'm Peter A. Make sure you're subscribed anywhere you get podcasts, and be sure to follow me on socials at MLU Pod. You can also support My Little Underground for as little as $1 a month. Link is in the description and over at peteraradio.com. Today on the show, we have Joe Stevens. He's the man behind Peel Dream magazine, and we talked about comparisons to shoegaze and indie pop acts such as My Bloody Valentine, Stereolab, and Broadcast. We talked about some of his latest projects like Agitprop Alterna and the Moral Panics EP, both great works. Go check them out. He's got new music on the way and so much more with Joe Stevens, Peel Dream magazine on My Little Underground.
I was actually recording something and I totally lost track of time. That's why I missed this.
New PDM stuff or what?
New Peel Dream magazine, yeah.
Another EP, another LP? What's popping?
Probably a LP. I'm not
Wow.
I'm not obliged to say much about it.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, I'm working on an LP.
So, speaking of Peel Dream, this is basically your brainchild, but then you just added some more musicians to the touring lineup, or you wanted to sweeten some sounds in the studio?
It's kind of like it's essentially a solo project. I recorded Modern Metaphysic by myself at my apartment in 2017, and then sort of decided to start the band based on that. And I recruited some friends to play, and then we're gonna put the record out and we needed to tour, so we needed to have a live show and all that kind of stuff. And then basically as that went on, I was playing with people who were contributing to the sound of it, and Joanne coming in as a vocalist and stuff. It kind of took on more of a collaborative feeling and sort of became like a band. I don't know if other bands have this where they float in and out of how much of a band they are versus solo project, but it kind of was like that.
Queens of the Stone Age is a popular example of that. It's essentially Josh Homme's project, but there's, over the years, it's been a revolving door of musicians coming in and out and adding some stuff to what the band has already done.
Yes.
Is Peel Dream kind of in that realm?
Yes, it is. Okay. At the moment, it's back to just me because I moved actually to LA, and I obviously am quarantining, can't really play with other people. So I'm in LA, just doing my thing.
Yeah, and you've been doing some solo sets on Instagram and doing some other shows. The band aspect of PDM, is that something you would continue? Hopefully when COVID kind of subsides, or are you going to keep it by yourself? Do you see yourself doing solo shows when when we're able to have shows?
Not really. I want to play as a band. It's complicated because the band that as it existed at the beginning of this year is all in New York, and if touring does start and we get some cool show opportunity or something, then yeah, I would definitely like to make that happen. And then I would have to have a conversation with them hey, do you want to make this happen or whatever, and kind of go from there. But I never want to play as I don't like the idea of a solo. It has this corny stigma to me. It's just a project. It's just Peel Dream magazine. Whether or not it's me or multiple people, it's a show. It's me. It's my songs. But I would never want to just have me and a guitar on stage or me and a piano or whatever.
Hey, it's me, Joe. It's just Joe. Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just Joe. What are your thoughts on a lot of the Stereolab Broadcast, My Bloody Valentine comparisons that I've been seeing of PDM?
I knew, I knew you were gonna talk. It's kind of like the thing that everyone loves to talk about the most. I mean, yeah, I loved those bands, and I was super influenced by them when I was making Agitprop Alterna, and I wanted to kind of like make my rock record, and that's like what came out. I mean, I think I really wanted to do something that I felt like was relevant in this time, 2018, 2019. And I was kind of like shocked that there weren't other bands, playing with the motoric and the sort of like post rock aspect so much. Like I felt like whatever people were calling shoegaze, it was like new gaze, just like heavy, like kind of hardcore tangential music with lots of pedals. But like to me, it wasn't in the tradition of like true indie pop or something. So I wanted to do kind of like that indie pop redux of the shoegaze stuff, with the motoric and all that kind of stuff.
Right. So, essentially when people are writing about you and they put those names in with your name, you don't necessarily have an issue with because those are artists that you like and you admire.
Yeah, of course. It would be
Okay.
so stupid of me to be like, I don't know what they're talking. Like, everybody's influenced by things, and like, I talk with my musician friends, and it's always just like, hey, I'm so stoked on this record right now, and I'm trying to do something that sounds like it. What do you think? Or I'm trying to make something that sounds like this meets this. That's what everyone does. It's what I do, and you know,
You're a melting pot. That's how I look at it.
I'm a
You
melting
know,
pot.
that's all it is, and that's all what a lot of people are. But there are some artists that weigh a little too heavy in what they're inspired by. The whole idea of wearing your influences on your sleeve. And I know I talked to Joe Trainer of Dummy about this, and he had an interesting take. It's like, well, everyone is influenced by something. So what do you think about that? That whole idea of artists wearing their influences on their sleeves and that whole thing.
Yeah, I mean that's totally true. Um, I've like pondered this before. Like what makes something great, and like what is it to be original. Um, like if something's if it, for me it's really all about like the songwriting, and kind of like in the moment what combination of things are you putting together, regardless of whether or not it kind of steers too close to something. And I think that people are kind of like they're really harsh, or like really they love to harp on like certain things that sound like certain other things, and then they give other things kind of like a free pass, if that makes sense. Like as a musician, I hear every time I hear something, I hear immediately like what they're going for, what they're doing, and I don't know. Like I don't think that what I do is an exception. Like I'm,
Where do you think an artist can walk the line between inspiration and parody? Like where do you think inspiration becomes parody, or when someone's just inspired by something?
you know, just to take a step back for a second. There's this book that I really like by Herman Melville called Pierre. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
So it's like a really I read it in college, and it's like it's very like it's like a deep Melville cut, and it's about this like artist. It's a writer who's like based on Herman Melville, and he has this like juvenile first book that is like becomes really popular in the story. Like this is like the story of the novel. So he writes this like juvenile book that is like uh, kind of ripping off of like the popular themes of the time. It's like in the 1900s. It's about like going to like a foreign land, like in the Pacific or like going to an island or something like that. And he regrets the fact that he wrote this book that he feels like wasn't original. And it becomes really popular and like everyone loves it, whatever. He makes lots of money from it. And apparently, like Melville, this actually happened with him. Like his first book was like a huge success, but he didn't like it. And then the character is like driven by this desire to make something like original instead of that. Like he wants to go the polar opposite way, and like he wants to write this book that will like discover the meaning of life. And it basically like consumes him and like ruins him, and he like dies in like misery at the end of the novel. And I always thought that was like kind of cool. I think that, you know, every artist, like if something kind of takes off a little bit, they then after they've made it, they kind of like look back on it and they're like, I wonder if I did like veer a little too closely to this or that or whatever. And you know, there's like that. I think everybody who makes art thinks about that, and I'm no exception. But at the same time, like it's part of like your journey as a writer to just like do what you feel and do what is inspiring to you in the moment. And there's always the next record, like there's always the next thing you're gonna do. And yeah, so that's kind of what I think about that.
Yeah, as you continue, to grow as an artist, is there any part of you that, because I just brought up, Stereolab broadcast, My Bloody Valentine, shoegaze, and all that stuff. Is there any part of you that eventually does not want to be associated with that? Not that you're ashamed or anything like that. I'm just saying eventually, um, is there any other kind of approach to music that you would want to explore that is sans the motoric, the shoegaze, and indie pop, and etc.?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's like the I consider like the Up and Up EP, Agitprop Alterna, and Moral Panics to basically be like one record. They were all recorded at the same time. So I think that as an outsider, someone might think like, oh, there's all these like consecutive things that all sound like that. So that is like what they're continually moving toward or something. But it's actually not true. Like Modern Metaphysic that came before that record is like a pretty different record. I don't think that anyone could just say like it fits so neatly into the Agitprop alternative sound. And I had this kind of feeling like after I made all of those songs that like I wasn't ready to like do that again, you know. And I'm always trying to, despite what some people say about me on the internet, I am always trying to come up with something that I personally think is new at least. And that's kind of what I'm working on at the moment. So yeah, I think people are going to be a little bit shocked when they hear the new stuff that I'm working on. It's very different.
Cool. I'm very excited to hear. So it's my body on Agitprop Alterna. It kind of tackles self confidence and people making you feel small. Like, has that ever happened to you artistically and personally, and how did you overcome it?
Oh my God, yes. So I mean, well, I mean, it's supposed to be like an anthem for the idea that. By the way, I'm a notoriously terrible talker. I'm not good at doing interviews or anything like that. So if you're
You're
like,
doing
if your
fine.
inner
You're doing
monologue is
fine.
like, if your inner monologue is like, oh, this guy sucks. Like, I'm sorry because like I have trouble talking sometimes, but I'm
No,
trying to.
look,
I'm trying to do my best.
the worst interviewee is the one that doesn't show up. How about
Okay,
that?
well, I almost was that. So, but anyway, so yeah, so anyway, I have definitely contended with that feeling a lot. I mean, like when I lived in New York, I was kind of like invisible. I always felt like I was not really accepted much by the music community there or known much by it. And I'm not no stranger to having people kind of like pick on me a little bit about like what I'm doing wrong and what's whack about my music or whatever. And I there's probably a little bit of that in It's My Body, but it's not literally about like feeling picked on musically. It's not like that. It's supposed to be like an anthem about autonomy over yourself.
Hey, what's interesting is that you've played a lot of venues that I frequent, and I haven't heard of Peel
Where? In
Dream.
New York?
Yeah, yeah,
You live in New
Baby's
York?
All Right, and yeah, Baby's All Right, Union Pool. I've been to tons of shows there, and I never knew of a Peel Dream magazine show. Like I've never maybe the people I followed at the time never really said anything. It's so I even follow Babies on socials. I didn't see anything. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't paying attention.
I think our like quote unquote profile was like kind of building a bit like toward the end of 2019 and early 2020 there, and then everything went to shit.
Right, exactly.
So I kind of think like, who knows? But that doesn't surprise me.
So educate me
We're
and
super
everybody.
underground, dude. Super underground.
What, you guys?
I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
No, yeah, of course. So educate me and everybody about the Stephen Cohen's influence on Moral Panic's EP.
All right. So there's Stanley Cohen.
Oh, Stanley. What? What? Wow. All right. Okay.
So truth be told, I have not read this book. Like I've not like actually sat down and read the whole thing. But I think it's a very interesting book, and I've read pieces of it. And yeah, I actually like the guy who runs the UK label we work with knows a lot about it. And when I told him about it, I thought I was like pulling out this deep cut, and he was like, "Oh yeah, everyone in England knows about this." But it was basically like a sociological book about like kind of studying the way that the government in England in the 60s reacted to quote unquote moral panics that were happening in the 60s. And then in particular, like the feuding between like the mods and the rockers. Have you heard of that?
No.
So like the mods were nowadays like we associate the mods with like a culture and like colors and fashion and all this kind of stuff, and that is true. But like specifically, it was like a youth punk, like a proto punk movement, like in England, basically. And they were like clashing with these kind of more like greaser type. It's like very silly to talk about in retrospect, but like they were clashing with like other proto punk types, and everyone was worried that the culture was going to shit. And basically, governments use like panics like that to create like a sense of like them providing security to people and like returning normalcy after things have gone wrong, and that in turn promotes like a kind of blind faith in politicians and stuff like that. So it was something that I was like thinking a lot about when I was writing all these songs. And I love like the mods just as like a cast of characters. And I had some songs about them, like Permanent Moral Crisis on Agitprop Alterna, and New Culture on Moral Panics. And we were sitting with all these kind of extra songs, and like I was trying to think of a way that I could fold these into the Agitprop Alterna story, which has to do with like politics and Bertolt Brecht. And it just made sense to kind of like bring that element into it.
It kind of reminds me of like the East Coast West Coast conflict of the early the mid '90s in the hip hop world. That's what it kind of reminds me of. Right? Is that fair to say? Is that a fair comparison?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like literally like rival gangs.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So, Slumberland Records, how did you get involved with this iconic indie label?
Well, my friend Sean introduced me to Mike Schulman, who runs Slumberland. and I guess he kind of like passed along a copy of Modern Metaphysic, the record that I made in 2017, and on a whim, like we like met up and like hit it off, and wanted, we decided that we should put this record out. That was actually, it was pretty exciting. That was in Oakland. I was like visiting family there, and it just kind of coalesced because I don't know if I would have met him in New York, but I was like out there and we were able to meet up.
Do you remember the compilation that they put out with Fortuna Pop a couple of years ago, Continental Drift?
Yeah, Wild
I
Honey's
think,
on that.
yeah. I love that compilation, and I think if they did another
Oh, yeah.
one, you guys would have been like track one. I feel like.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Well, if he decides to do another one, he should hit us up.
they should do it. I don't know what's taking them so long. It's been 5 years at this point.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Tell me about the 30th anniversary show at Union Pool.
That was really fun. That was actually on my birthday.
Oh, cool.
That was like my birthday present to myself. That was a really fun show. Mike came out to New York, obviously, for that show. And we like, one of my favorite things about that was like me and Mike just like got dinner and drank a bunch the night before. And that was cool. And then like the actual show, there were a lot of people. It was like one of those moments where I was like, oh, this is cool.
And
It's like
Union
what
Pool
that
is
would
not
be
big.
for people. I don't know. It's cool. Very romantic.
Yeah. Did you have a cake? Did anybody wish you happy birthday or what?
I think people got me like a round of shots or something.
Okay, same thing. Same deal.
No cake, I don't think.
Okay. Are you fans of some of the Slumberland alumni like Dum Dum Girls, Wild Honey, Black Tambourines? Stereolab did a few things with them. Velocity Girl, Pains Being Pure at Heart, and Mercury Girls, and among others.
Totally. I love Slumberland. I've loved Slumberland for a long time. I whenever like bands that were on Slumberland came through like New York, I was always kind of interested in that. I liked I felt like they had a kind of like a purity or something of like aesthetic that I didn't see a lot of in New York bands. And it was always kind of, it felt like this like visitation from like a foreign culture or something like that in a good way.
What's your favorite Slumberland output?
Ambassadors of indie pop. What's my favorite what?
Your favorite Slumberland output?
My favorite Slumberland output. I would have to think about this. I'm a huge fan of the Expert Alterations EP that came out with like the white and blue cover.
Yeah, I remember
Know
that.
that record?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that record.
Tell me about the you did No Joy's virtual December beach party. How was that?
It was fun. It was like a pre-recorded thing that I did for it, obviously. Um, I have mixed feelings about live streams. That was a cool one. I like did this like layered thing for it. I don't know. I always wonder like how many people actually watch the live streams, but I think a lot of people watch that one. I really like the other sets. I thought No Joy set was awesome. There was like a really cool meditation set. Winter set was awesome.
Yeah, I also have mixed feelings about live streams because some of them can sound terrible, and then you know what? For me, in general, it's like I just rather hear your music. You know what I mean? I can wait to see when I can wait for shows to come back, but for now on, I can just hear your music.
Totally. And I think that I just have a beef with like performance in general, like even live performances sometimes. Um, I don't I don't always think it's necessary for bands to tour as much as they do. I'm like a big fan of recorded music
Same, I'm
as,
right there with
as well as like an amazing, I love an amazing live show and I love the culture surrounding shows. Like I'm the kind of person that like when I was going to shows in New York, I would actually just prefer to go to a venue on a Friday night or something, just like show up at like 8:30 and just like grab a beer and like see what happens, see who goes on, etc. I'm into live music for that aspect of it. I'm not the person who like, you know, has like my top artists and I like see when they're going on tour and see them at the nicest venue in the city and then I go and I get the tickets and I love it. I'm not like that. I just don't get anything out of it for some reason.
It's kind of exhausting.
It's,
Concerts.
it's
Some of them, yeah, but it is tiring.
it's exhausting and it lacks like the romance for me. Like the romance for me is just like being at a little like punk house or a little scrappy bar and seeing who goes up on stage. Like that's my favorite type of show to see. And similarly, like I don't always love performing myself, and that extends to live streams.
Yeah, again, it
Have
can
you
be very.
seen that meme, the band meme 66, when like it's like the performer on stage and then everyone's in the crowd. Do you know band meme 666?
No,
Oh my god. Please follow it after this conversation. It's
sure, sure.
so good. But it's like this meme of like a person performing and like everyone's in the crowd and everyone has like a thought bubble going up and they're all thinking this sounds like shit. And then, like the performers in on it with the audience and it's just so good.
I think your attitude about live performing. I don't know if you ever listened to Harry Nilsson. He was the same way. He didn't really like performing live all
Dude,
that
Harry
much.
Nilsson is like one of my favorite artists of all time.
Dude, I just got Nielsen Schmielsen on vinyl, an
Oh,
original
great.
pressing. It's fucking great.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
My favorite record is The Point.
Oh, I haven't heard it.
You should check it out.
Yeah, I will. I definitely. Did you hear Ty Segall covering him?
No.
He did a whole. He called it Seagal Schmagal, and he just
Whoa.
did a bunch of Harry Nilsson covers from Nielsen Schmielsen. Fantastic.
That's awesome.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and I know Harry Nilsson didn't perform. I know that was like a thing. I actually did you watch that documentary about him?
No, I didn't even know there was one.
It's so good. It's called Who is Harry Nilsson and Why is Everybody Talking About Him? It's so
How
good.
can I watch it?
It's like free on YouTube.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
man.
amazing. It's like a real tearjerker actually. He had like a tragic life.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And
But I do, for the record, I do love performing when it's good.
of course, yeah.
Like I love performing and I love touring and I love connecting with people and audience members.
And that's it. Like, I like connecting with the artists, especially at the smaller shows. I like talking to people like you, after you get on, get off the stage and you're at your merch booth and I buy some stuff and I just talk for a while. It's really cool.
It's the best.
Yeah.
I also love the idea of like when people are like new to a scene and like going to a show and then like afterwards like talking to the performer and like I don't know. I just love it. It's so romantic. It's so non-internet age. It's like connecting
Yeah.
real time. It's pure.
Yeah, absolutely. MF Doom was another one. His live performances were always weird. He would have like fake people, fake Dooms go out, and he would go out into the crowd and like watch the fake version of him perform. I think that's cool.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
We need to institute that for our shows.
You should do that. Get a fake Joe up there. No one would notice.
Exactly.
What can you tell me about your new album? Whatever you can tell me, give me a little bit of detail.
So, my all-time favorite band, and some people don't know this, is the Beach Boys.
Oh, I love the Beach Boys.
Me too. They're so good, and I'm like particularly interested in their like artsier stuff, like post Pet Sounds,
Okay.
like the quote unquote post surf stuff. So I'm really trying to channel this kind of like off kilter mid century Baroque pop, like psychedelic Baroque pop kind of thing right now. And I'm playing around with a lot of different textures. Like it's primarily like organ, which always has been in my stuff, as well as like banjo, harmonica, piano, Wurlitzer, stuff like that. There's actually no distorted guitar on any of the new stuff I'm working on, and
That sounds
it was almost just like a challenge to myself. Like I wanted to think of something that would feel fresh to me, and it's also something that I love, and I love melody, and I had taken a break from my melody stuff, when I was writing a lot of the Pure Dream magazine stuff. I mean, that stuff's melodic too, but I was experimenting with certain things on those records, like repetition and minimalism, and I'm experimenting with different kinds of things on this record. There's still a minimalist element and a repetition and organs, but there is a lot more melody.
I can't wait for that. And I think you're a big liar. You're a great talker. You're a great interviewee.
Okay, thank you. You're making me feel better.
Yeah. So, where can people follow Peel Dream Magazine? Where can people get your albums and whatnot?
Ooh, I don't even know. I think if you can probably find our records in certain indie record stores all over the world. Actually, luckily, maybe not like all of them, but some of them in some places. But I guess I would recommend ordering our albums through Bandcamp or through our labels, Slumberland or Tough Love. We actually, it's kind of interesting because we have different we have different editions of vinyl on like different labels, which is something I think is kind of fun, like for fans, because like if you want a white vinyl, that's Tough Love, but if you want a purple vinyl, that's through Slumberland,
That's amazing.
etc., etc. And it's actually like that for like all these records. And then of course all the digital streaming platforms, etc., etc. We have an Instagram account. You can follow us on Instagram. We even have a Facebook, Twitter.
TikTok.
No TikTok yet, but I'm going to talk to my nephews about helping me set up a TikTok.
All right. I appreciate you coming on, Joe. Looking forward to the new music. And yeah, stay safe out there.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Sorry I was late again. I feel
Dude,
really bad.
you're fine. You're fine.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, it's good to meet you.
Yeah, likewise.
All right. Well, be well.
You too.